Breaking news from Los Angeles. I'm literally in Los Angeles in a treehouse. Look how cool. I want you to subscribe. Scott wants you to subscribe. Look up Scott. Subscribe.
Yes,
Thanks.
please. Daddy needs new shoes. Daddy needs a second Ferrari.
That's really compelling to people, Scott.
My dick's too big for a Ferrari. I was lying. Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Scott Galloway.
And I'm Jessica Tarlov.
Okay, so let's talk about the politics of this Netflix Warner Brothers Discovery bombshell, because the corporate drama is only half the story. A group of major Hollywood producers just sent Congress an anonymous alarm bell warning that a Netflix takeover could destroy the theatrical market, and they're asking lawmakers to step in with maximum antitrust scrutiny. Meanwhile, rival bidders, including Paramount and Comcast, are already lobbying hard, arguing the deal would cement Netflix as an untouchable global monopoly. And here's where it gets even messier. The whole thing may ultimately hinge on how the Trump administration defines the market. Is Netflix competing with streaming platforms or with YouTube and basically anyone with a screen? Add in Paramount's political connections, Netflix dangling a nearly $6 billion breakup fee and a looming regulatory fight that could rival AT&T Time Warner. And this is shaping up to be as much a DC story as a Hollywood one. Jess, what is your read on the political theater here?
I mean, we should say theater, I guess, because we are talking about entertainment. But I think it's going to be lit, as the kids say, in DC. And I'm in Los Angeles right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this town is not happy about this. And I was surprised to see how many were speaking out so forcefully. Like James Cameron gave an interview about it, and I was kind of shocked to see how enthusiastic he was about the Paramount element of it, because I would have thought that the idea of the Ellisons being in charge would have been something that would have felt more threatening. But no, being owned by Netflix, which has spent the entirety of its existence hurting theatrical releases, right? And saying things like, we don't care about those butts in seats. We care about the butts and seats on your couch, feels like even more of a threat. The antitrust angle is coming from both sides, like Senator Mike Lee, and then you have the traditional Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and folks like that who are going to be against this. But it's going to be a very tough I guess it could take up to a year, right, for it to go through. Mm-hmm. I think there's a major milestone, though, coming during the summer. It fits in nicely, I guess, with the general mood about big tech, right? And whether there are monopolies for these enormous companies and whether, Netflix would be added to that space. So that's kind of my top line thought at 7:45 in the morning in Los Angeles. What are you thinking?
So I love Netflix. I'm producing an original scripted series with them. I think Ted Sarandos is a fantastic leader. I think it's an incredible value proposition. I don't like this deal. Only because, politicians have correctly tapped into, ranging from Trump to Mamdani, this notion of affordability. And basically, revolutions get started because of lack of affordability. People want to make more money and have products be less expensive. And at some point, America has to be ready for an adult conversation around how you actually create affordability. And it's really boring, wonky, long-term structural change that essentially comes down to one word: competition. You shouldn't have three companies controlling 90% of the poultry market, because that just means chicken increases in price faster than inflation for the last 30 years, as it has, or big tech or big pharma. Concentration of power is not a good thing. And Netflix, this makes all the sense in the world for Netflix. They would, and this is what I don't like about this deal, they would largely be unassailable. I mean, YouTube could come at them from a different dimension, but combined, they would just have an enormous share of premium TV and streaming. They'd have the largest subscriber base in the world, one of the largest libraries of premium scripted content, and some of the most valuable franchises in entertainment. Warner Brothers owns HBO, Max, DC, Harry Potter, CNN, Discovery, all of these sports rights. So let's talk about streaming. Netflix plus HBO? I mean, that's literally, okay, you own Walmart, but you also own LVMH. Well, no, I think of HBO as LVMH.
Sorry.
I think of HBO as being the artisanal network. Like if there's a water cooler moment, HBO generally has it. And they do it with $2 billion in content versus 18 at Warner Brothers. And I think it's a lesson they'll be taught in business schools around culture. And when we were pitching our series, we got offers from several different platforms, and everyone was hoping that HBO would come in with the best offer because talent appears to just love working at HBO. And together, you just have a huge percentage of must-have shows and movies. And the fear is that that leads to fewer choices, higher prices, and worse terms for consumers. The best windup from a consumer's perspective here would be probably Comcast to create a number 3 or a number 4 viable competitor, because the more competitors, the more capital goes from shareholders to labor, and capital's been kicking the shit out of labor for the last 40 years. And also the lower the ad rates and the more options that consumers have, which would keep streaming prices low. And by the way, streaming prices are skyrocketing. You're already seeing the impact of concentration. So this could potentially wipe out meaningful streaming competition. And after years of consolidation, essentially the streaming market is boiled down to Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime, Warner Brothers, Apple TV, and Paramount. If Paramount doesn't get this, they're going to struggle. They're subscale right now. And this combined merger would create one giant with, basically 2 strong competitors, Disney and Amazon, and everybody else would basically be compromised or irrelevant. So it's probably not a monopoly, but it probably is moving towards an oligopoly, which I don't like. Any thoughts, Jess?
Well, it'll be an interesting test of the Ellisons' relationship with Trump, which has obviously been particularly warm as of late. And if the president takes this on as a kind of personal fight, then I think that it could get ugly. You bring up the cost of streaming. I'm astounded. I'm not a millennial that can cord cut since I'm actually on cable, but the cost is burdensome. And I know a number of people who earn a very good living that are making hard choices about streaming services, not because they technically can't afford it, but they're actually morally opposed to what's going on here, that you should have to be paying $19.99, sometimes into the 20s, for the bundle to make sure that you can see the things that you want, the things that your husband wants, the things that your kids want. And it's just too much at this point. I trust you on the brass tacks of the deal more than what my reading has gotten me, but it does feel like this would be a statement about the type of entertainment that will be produced. And listening to all of these creators and filmmakers, there was an anonymous letter that they sent to Congress, got there yesterday, saying how concerned they were about this, that people feel like you will not be able to make the kind of theater that you have in the past if Netflix is the one that owns Warner Brothers. I think is something to pay attention to. And the creator economy, as we call it, has a lot of benefits, but it also has a lot of drawbacks for people that are trying to do different forms of art, let's say. And I hope that there's a more fulsome discussion of that element, because I think the people that it will most directly affect, obviously the consumers, but the people that are part of this industry and are making these products, that their voice should matter. And I imagine as the ball rolls forward, that there will be more opportunity for them to come forward. And, the fear of retribution is real. And that was mentioned in that anonymous letter, saying, you can't be on the wrong side of Netflix, especially in this environment. But I would really like to hear from more of those voices. And James Cameron is just powerful enough that he can do that.
Yeah, I want to hear from economists. I find the creators think they're all so fucking precious. And, they want to talk about the collective of the movie theater going experience. And yet I'd be shocked if any of them actually go to the movies. But
I just saw Zootopia too.
Oh, well, yeah, but see, you're in the 7th circle of hell called parenting young children.
And I'm going to Disneyland today.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I know. I wasn't going to tell you because
sorry.
I don't want to hear about, I'm not going to have the Avatar iPad. The kids can just go on teacups. They're tiny, but
just hearing you, listening to you speak, and it's sort of a lesson. I think it's so important around important decisions to get different voices in a room and just talk things out, because at least I start to process and think. And just listening to you talk about it, I now think this will probably not go through. Because if you look at big media mergers, AT&T Time Warner was a 1.5 to 2 year long battle. Comcast and Fox was blocked. Paramount and Skydance was pretty heavily scrutinized. Penguin, Random House, and Simon & Schuster was blocked. And when I see the political chips lining up against this deal, and the fact I think the economists and the folks at the FTC and the DOJ are going to go, okay, so the White House doesn't want this, Ellison doesn't want it. And distinct to that, this actually trips a lot of anti-competitive wires that if Netflix gets HBO and this content from Warner, and I think they're literally unassailable. And some people, they'll argue that no, it's about YouTube, but the IP they're going to have. And I got to think the Ellisons are just panicked because Paramount becomes an afterthought. All of a sudden, the ridiculous price that dad paid for his son to go to play in traffic and go to the Oscars is going to start to look like how on earth do we get our money out of this thing when we become an also-ran to Netflix?
Oh, we should also note that CNN would be spun out from this. It would go with Discovery Global. So Netflix would not own CNN.
Yeah, they don't want it.
I know, I'm just saying.
I know Ted well enough to know he wants nothing to do with politics. He's awfully smart that way. So look, the bottom line is a Netflix acquisition of Warner raises monopoly concerns as it would become the number one streamer with one of the biggest content libraries. It would likely consolidate too much of the, call it, I don't know, must-see, must-have content. It would reduce competition in streaming, advertising, and probably licensing or content licensing. And at the end of the day, if you want to talk about affordability, you don't want to give any firm, even a firm as wonderful as Netflix, unrivaled leverage over consumers, creators, studios, and advertisers. So it doesn't automatically create a monopoly, but it moves towards oligopoly power, which I think is bad for consumers. Anyways, any other thoughts, Jess?
No, that's
Nope.
all I got.
There you go. Well, thanks for another hot take. Enjoy Disneyland. I would just take a big fat Xanax. They're called Hulk Xanax, and just let Brian. See, this is where you screwed up. This is where I used to do this once a year. And basically the message from my partner was for 364 days a year, you basically do, what's the word? Dick. You have to give me a
this
weekend.
Is your day?
It's a weekend. You're taking our kids and their friends to Disney or Universal, and I was charged with that. I think the asymmetry in the relationship here is that you're both there. Why would you both do this?
Well, we're out in LA. My sister lives here, so we're going with my nephew, and they go all the time to Disneyland. So they have the lay of the land. We have the Haunted Mansion, show, and then the light show. I mean, the kids want to see parades more than they can't go on a lot of rides. They're too small. So Xanax and a turkey leg, and maybe I can find a cocktail. And we'll make it through the day. They can only last 5 hours. It's not going to be that bad. That's what I'm telling myself.
Just wait. Kids get a new boost of energy when they see Mickey and a bunch of princesses running around.
I mean, I'm excited for it too. So.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you on the other
posted.
end. Great. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks.